Imagine this. It's 1943. America is fighting a two-front war, desperately needing pilots to man its growing fleet of aircraft carriers in the Pacific and Atlantic. Now, picture those carriers, the massive steel beasts of the ocean, not cutting through salt spray and rolling waves, but gliding silently across the vast, calm expanse of Lake Michigan, 1,000 miles from the nearest ocean. This is not fiction. This is the astonishing, forgotten truth of the U.S. Navy's ghost fleet of the Great Lakes, a high-stakes, audacious experiment that saved thousands of lives and fundamentally altered the course of naval air combat training. The problem: a crisis of confidence and collisions. In the early years of World War II, the Navy faced a terrifying logistical nightmare: pilot attrition. To defeat the Axis powers, the Navy needed thousands of highly trained aviators, skilled in the terrifying art of carrier landing. This involves flying a high-speed aircraft onto a tiny, moving target in the open ocean, a maneuver so dangerous it was known as the ultimate challenge. Training on active Atlantic and Pacific carriers was a non-starter. Sending irreplaceable warships and raw recruits into submarine-infested waters or combat zones was a gamble the Navy couldn't afford. Even stateside, the congestion in coastal waters led to constant near misses and collisions. The Navy needed a safe, segregated, and easily accessible place to train, a place where the risks were reduced to the maneuver itself, not the environment. Captain Richard F. Whitehead, a forward-thinking naval aviator, proposed an idea so radical it was almost dismissed as madness. Turn the Great Lakes into an aircraft carrier training center? The transformation, from luxury liners to warships. The Great Lakes offered a perfect solution. They were landlocked, protected by vast distances from U-boats, and offered deep, open water miles from congested shipping lanes. But where would they find carriers? Building new ones was too slow. The solution lay in two beautiful, obsolete passenger liners, once the pride of the Great Lakes cruise industry, the SS C&B and the SS Greater Buffalo. The SS C&B was a luxurious coal-fired sidewheeler, famous for its ballroom and plush accommodations. It was purchased for $755,000, and in a whirlwind of engineering audacity was stripped bare. Its ornate decks and cabins were replaced with a sturdy, flat wooden flight deck. Renamed the USS Wolverine IX-64, it became the world's first freshwater aircraft carrier. The SS Greater Buffalo, a massive triple-screw steamer, soon followed. It was converted and christened the USS Sable, IX-81. These freshwater carriers were not intended for combat. They lacked armor, traditional navigation equipment, and were powered by aging paddle wheels, in the case of the Wolverine, which limited their speed and maneuverability. Crucially, they were the only paddle wheel-driven aircraft carriers ever built, but they served their purpose perfectly. They had a flight deck capable of handling training aircraft.
The training ground, the wacky waker, and the stuttering snail. Operating out of Navy Pier in Chicago, the Wolverine and the Sable would sail into the vast waters of Lake Michigan. The training syllabus was brutal, designed to wash out any pilot not ready for the rigors of combat. Training on the Great Lakes posed unique challenges. 1. Low freeboard. The carriers sat much lower in the water than their ocean-going counterparts, meaning that on days with high waves, the flight deck could be sprayed with icy fresh water. 2. Lack of speed. The aging engines of the Wolverine and Sable couldn't generate the necessary 30-knot wind-over-deck speed achieved by modern carriers. This forced the pilots to be exceptionally skilled in low-speed, high-angle approaches, a skill that proved invaluable in combat. The cadets trained relentlessly. Between 1942 and 1945, the two carriers facilitated 116,000 successful landings. A staggering 17,820 aviators, including future President George H.W. Bush and legendary combat ace John Glenn, earned their wings on the Wolverine and the Sable, becoming the backbone of the Navy's air power. The cost: a sunken museum of warbirds. The downside of this accelerated training was an inevitable series of crashes. These were not combat losses, they were training accidents, where inexperienced pilots would miss the arresting gear, suffer mechanical failure, or simply misjudge their approach. Because Lake Michigan was the training ground, over 120 to 200 aircraft, the exact number is still debated, ended up on the lake bottom, some settling in over 200 feet of cold, dark water. These sunken aircraft included F-4F Wildcats, SBD Dauntless dive bombers, and TBF Avengers, and F-6 Hellcats. For decades, the wrecks lay undisturbed, their location kept a secret by the Navy. The freshwater environment, far from the corrosive effects of salt and marine life, preserved these planes in an almost pristine condition, turning the lake floor into a silent, submerged museum of World War II aviation history.
The legacy rising from the deep. The story didn't end with the war. The Great Lakes carriers were decommissioned and scrapped soon after the war ended, their secret history nearly forgotten. However, in the 1980s, the wrecks began to be rediscovered. A dedicated community of researchers, historians, and wreck hunters started the painstaking process of identifying, locating, and recovering some of these historic warbirds. Because the planes are U.S. Navy property, all recovery operations must be done in cooperation with the Navy. The recovered aircraft, painstakingly conserved and restored, now stand as powerful artifacts in museums across the country, including the National Naval Aviation Museum in Pensacola, Florida, and the USS Midway Museum in San Diego, California. They are physical testament to the remarkable innovation of the Navy's Chicago experiment. The USS Wolverine and USS Sable were the unsung heroes of naval aviation training. They were the freshwater carriers that faced no enemy, fired no shots, but launched the pilots who would ultimately win the air war in the Pacific. They stand as a profound symbol of Americans' ingenuity, the astonishing realization that sometimes the most successful wartime innovation is born not on the front lines, but on the calm, unexpected waters of a great lake.